The restaurant was quiet that evening. Only a few tables were occupied, and soft music played from the speakers above. The lights were warm, casting a gentle glow over the polished wooden tables and neatly arranged chairs. The air smelled faintly of roasted coffee and fresh bread. A young waitress moved steadily between tables, balancing a tray of dishes in her hands. She worked with care, making sure each guest had what they needed. She smiled politely, even when the work was tiring, because she believed that small acts of kindness could make a big difference. She had been working in this restaurant for almost 2 years. It was not a fancy place, but it was well known in the area for its calm atmosphere and friendly service. She liked her job. It gave her a routine and a way to interact with people from different walks of life. Some guests were hurried and impatient, others were chatty and warm. She had learned to read people quickly, knowing when to offer a smile, when to leave them alone, and when to listen carefully to their words. Her coworkers respected her quiet strength and her ability to stay calm under pressure. That evening, a man arrived who immediately changed the atmosphere. He was tall, well-dressed, and carried himself with a confidence that drew the eyes of those around him. He was the kind of man people noticed when he entered a room, someone whose presence demanded attention without him saying a word. He asked for a table by the corner, near the piano that stood unused in the corner of the room. The waitress approached with her usual polite smile and led him to the table. Pulling out a chair for him with the practiced grace of someone who had done this 1,000 times, he glanced at the menu but seemed more interested in observing the restaurant and its staff. His eyes rested on the waitress for a moment longer than was polite. Studying her movements as she placed a glass of water in front of him, she noticed his gaze but remained composed, continuing to arrange the silverware and napkins with steady hands. There was something in the way he looked at her that felt different from the usual curiosity of guests. It was a mix of amusement and challenge, as if he was testing her. Waiting to see how she would react under his silent scrutiny, the young woman moved to take the orders of the other guests. But she could feel his gaze following her. It was not threatening, but it carried a subtle weight. She had learned long ago that some people liked to assert control, even in small ways, and she had grown skilled at keeping her own calm. She approached him again when he was ready to order, her voice polite but steady. He asked for a special dish, one that was not on the regular menu. She raised an eyebrow slightly but nodded, showing him that she could handle unusual requests without hesitation. As she walked away to place the order, she could hear him speaking quietly to the people at the next table. The tone of his voice carried a hint of teasing, of someone who enjoyed being the center of attention. It was clear that he had not just come for a meal. He had come for an experience. The waitress felt a small tightening in her chest, a mixture of curiosity and caution. She had dealt with many difficult guests before, but something about this man felt different. There was a challenge in his presence, one that she could sense even before he spoke directly to her. She returned with the dishes, placing each one carefully in front of the guests. The rich man watched her every movement, still maintaining that faint, knowing smile. When she set down his plate, he looked up at her and asked almost casually if she had any special talents. The question caught her off guard. She had been asked questions before, some polite, some intrusive, but this one had a weight to it, a hidden challenge. She smiled politely and said that she enjoyed music, but that her piano playing was only for herself, something she did in private. The man leaned back in his chair, a spark of amusement in his eyes. He asked if she would play something for the guests, just a small piece. The room fell silent for a moment, as other diners noticed the conversation. Some leaned forward slightly, curious to see if she would agree. The waitress felt a mix of surprise and hesitation. She had never performed for strangers in such a setting, but something inside her stirred. A quiet determination, a reminder of the years she had spent practicing in secret, away from the eyes of the world. She took a deep breath and nodded. It was not out of arrogance, but out of a calm confidence she had developed over the years. She walked slowly toward the piano, her steps measured and deliberate. The man watched her, clearly expecting a brief, unremarkable performance. The other guests whispered softly among themselves, unsure of what to anticipate. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted, a subtle tension mixing with anticipation. It was a moment suspended in time where everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. as she reached the piano. She paused for a moment, placing her hands on the keys. Her fingers hovered briefly, recalling the countless hours she had spent practicing. The quiet moments when music had been her refuge. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memories and emotions flow through her. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint clinking of cutlery. Even the rich man seemed to lean forward slightly, intrigued by the calm assurance she now displayed. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, filled with a subtle depth that immediately captured the attention of everyone in the room. Her hands moved gracefully, guided by years of practice and a deep connection to the music. The melody grew richer, more complex, weaving through the air and touching the hearts of those listening. Conversation stopped completely. Guests set down their glasses and forks, drawn into the unexpected beauty unfolding before them. The rich man's expression changed as he listened. The faint smirk he had worn earlier faded, replaced by a look of genuine surprise and admiration. He had underestimated her, assuming that a waitress could not possess such skill and passion. But now there was no denying the talent before him. The music spoke for itself, transcending the simple boundaries of social roles and appearances. It was a reminder that true ability often hides in plain sight. Waiting for the right moment to be revealed, the young woman continued to play. Each note carefully chosen, each chord resonating with emotion. The restaurant seemed to disappear around her, replaced by the world of the music she created. Guests were captivated, their eyes following her hands as they danced across the keys. Even the staff paused in their work, caught up in the unexpected performance. It was a rare moment, a reminder of the power of talent and dedication, and of the quiet strength that ordinary people can possess. When she finally finished, there was a moment of stunned silence. The final note lingered in the air, echoing softly in the hearts of those who had listened. Then, slowly, applause began to rise. It started quietly from one or two guests and grew steadily until the entire room was clapping. The rich man stood as well, offering a genuine smile of respect. It was a small but significant gesture, an acknowledgement of her skill and courage. The young woman smiled back, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment and pride. She had not sought attention, nor had she aimed to impress. But she had shared a part of herself with the world, and it had been received with admiration and respect. The evening continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Guests spoke softly, sharing their appreciation for the unexpected performance. The rich man engaged in conversation with her, this time with a tone of curiosity and respect rather than challenge. The young waitress returned to her work, moving between tables with the same grace and care, but now carrying a quiet confidence that had been strengthened by the events of the night. She had faced a challenge, not through confrontation, but through the sharing of her talent, and she had emerged not only unshaken, but celebrated. As the night went on, the memory of that performance lingered. Guests left with smiles and stories to tell, the rich man with a newfound respect, and the waitress with a quiet reminder of her own strength. It was an ordinary evening transformed into something remarkable, a moment where music bridged gaps and revealed hidden depths. The experience would stay with her, a source of inspiration and a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary moments come from the simplest acts, performed with sincerity and heart. After her performance, the atmosphere in the restaurant had changed completely. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant clinking of cutlery no longer felt ordinary. The guests, who had been quietly enjoying their meals, now sat in an attentive silence, their eyes occasionally glancing at the piano and the young waitress who had just captured their hearts with music. Even the staff paused in their work for a moment, exchanging surprised glances and quiet murmurs about her unexpected talent. There was a sense of awe, shared feeling that they had just witnessed something special. The rich man, seated in his corner, leaned back in his chair, clearly impressed. The faint smirk he had worn earlier was gone, replaced by a thoughtful expression. He had intended to test her, to see how she would respond to a challenge, but the outcome had far exceeded his expectations. He now realized that this young woman, whom he had casually underestimated, possessed a level of skill and composure that demanded respect. His curiosity deepened, and he felt an unusual urge to know more about her. He called her over to his table, his tone friendly but tinged with curiosity. "I didn't expect that," he said, smiling genuinely this time. "You have a rare talent. How long have you been playing?" The waitress, standing politely with a notepad in hand, felt a warm flush of pride but kept her composure. "Since I was a child," she replied softly. "It's something I've always loved, though I didn't have the chance to pursue it professionally." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of years of practice, quiet dedication, and personal sacrifice. He nodded, clearly intrigued. "You're very disciplined. Most people wouldn't have that kind of focus. Did anyone teach you, or did you learn on your own?" She smiled faintly, thinking of the countless hours she had spent alone, teaching herself through books, recordings, and watching others play. "Mostly on my own," she admitted. "I had some guidance when I was younger, but I practiced a lot by myself. Music has always been my escape." There was a quiet honesty in her voice, a humility that contrasted sharply with the arrogance of some of the wealthy patrons he was used to. It was this combination of talent and modesty that fascinated him even more. The rich man leaned back, observing her closely. He noticed the steadiness of her hands, the calmness in her eyes, and the subtle confidence that radiated from her. There was a story there, he thought, a story of perseverance and hidden depth. He wanted to challenge her further, not to embarrass her, but to understand her better, to see if her skill extended beyond what he had just witnessed. "Do you ever perform for others, professionally?" he asked casually, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. The waitress shook her head politely. "No, not really. I only play here or at home. I enjoy it too much to make it a job. I like keeping it personal, something that is just mine." Her words revealed a quiet strength, a sense of independence, and a dedication to her passion that was rare. She had chosen her path carefully, balancing her work and her love for music without letting the pressures of life crush her spirit. The rich man smiled, leaning slightly forward. "I'd love to hear more, though. Perhaps you could play something more challenging. Something that would really show your range?" There was a polite challenge in his words, but it was no longer mocking. Instead, it was an invitation, a chance for her to demonstrate her true capabilities. The restaurant's other guests looked on curiously, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Some of them exchanged excited whispers, wondering what she would play next. The waitress hesitated for a brief moment, her fingers brushing the keys. She thought about the pieces she loved, the compositions that required precision, emotion, and control. She remembered the countless hours she had spent practicing, perfecting each note, each chord, until it resonated just right. She took a deep breath and nodded, walking toward the piano with quiet determination. There was no fear in her eyes, only focus and calm anticipation as she sat down. She noticed the rich man watching intently, his posture relaxed but alert. He was no longer a challenger trying to test her. He had become an audience member, eager to witness her gift. The other guests leaned forward slightly in their seats, sensing the shift in the energy of the room. The soft lighting reflected off the piano's polished surface, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Waiting for the music to begin once again, she placed her hands on the keys, feeling the familiar smoothness beneath her fingers. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting her memory and emotions guide her. She began with a soft, intricate piece, her fingers moving with precision and grace. The melody was delicate at first, flowing like a gentle stream, then gradually building in intensity. Each note carried emotion, telling a story that went beyond words. The room seemed to transform with her music, and even the staff felt the change. Pausing in their duties to listen, the rich man's expression changed as he listened. There was surprise, admiration, and a hint of awe in his eyes. He had witnessed many performances before, but few had captivated him in the way she did. Her skill was undeniable, and the emotion she conveyed through the music touched something deep within him. He realized that her talent was more than just technical ability. It was the ability to communicate, to connect, to move people through sound alone. As she continued, the music became more complex, incorporating variations and subtle shifts in rhythm that showcased her mastery. Her fingers moved effortlessly across the keys, and her posture remained composed and elegant. The piece demanded both precision and feeling, and she delivered it flawlessly. The guests were silent, some with eyes closed, lost in the beauty of the sound. There was no longer a sense of casual dining. The restaurant had become a small concert hall, with everyone present sharing in the experience. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. It started slowly, as if people were unsure how to react, then grew louder and more enthusiastic. The sound of clapping echoed off the walls, mingling with the lingering resonance of her last note. The rich man rose to his feet, clapping along with genuine admiration. He approached her table once again, extending a hand. "That was incredible," he said sincerely. "I had no idea. You are remarkable." His words were heartfelt, carrying a newfound respect and recognition for her talent and composure. The waitress smiled politely, feeling a warm glow of pride, but remaining humble. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." She had never sought attention or praise, but there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her music had touched others, that her dedication and passion had been acknowledged in a meaningful way. The rich man leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. "Have you ever thought about performing somewhere larger, maybe professionally? You have a gift that could inspire many people." The question was sincere, without pressure or expectation. It was a moment of genuine curiosity, a chance for her to consider possibilities she had long set aside. She shook her head gently, but her eyes reflected contemplation. "I've thought about it sometimes," she admitted, "but life hasn't given me the chance yet. I'm happy playing here, and that's enough for me." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of experience, responsibility, and the careful choices she had made. The rich man nodded, understanding the balance she maintained between her passion and her life's realities. "Sometimes the world needs to see what's hidden," he said thoughtfully. "Talent like yours shouldn't be kept secret, but I respect your choice to play for yourself as well." There was a sense of admiration in his tone, a recognition that her strength lay not only in her skill, but in her integrity and self-awareness. The guests began to return to their meals, but the energy in the room had shifted permanently. Conversations were quieter, but richer, with people discussing the unexpected beauty of the music they had just heard. The waitress continued her work, moving between tables with grace, her steps lighter and her smile more assured. There was a subtle confidence in her demeanor now, a recognition that her abilities were both seen and appreciated. Later, as the evening wore on, the rich man stayed at his table, occasionally glancing toward the piano. He had come to the restaurant seeking an ordinary meal, but he had found something far more memorable. He had encountered a person who, despite the simplicity of her position, carried a world of talent and strength within her. It was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving, that the most extraordinary gifts often lay hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. As she cleared the last few tables and prepared to close for the night, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The evening had been more than just another shift. It had been an affirmation of her skills, her dedication, and her ability to impact the lives of others through her art. She knew that she had faced a challenge, and had met it not with arrogance, but with sincerity and grace. It was a moment that would remain with her, a story she could carry quietly in her heart. Knowing that she had touched the lives of everyone who had been present that night, the rich man finally left, offering a polite nod and a smile of respect as he departed. The other guests followed soon after, carrying with them a story to tell, an unexpected memory of beauty and talent that had brightened their ordinary evening. The young waitress returned to the empty restaurant, the soft glow of the lights reflecting off the polished tables. She sat for a moment at the piano, letting her fingers hover above the keys, feeling the echo of the music she had played. There was peace in that moment, a quiet satisfaction that came from doing what she loved and sharing it, even if only for a brief while with the world around her. It had been a challenge that no one could have predicted, but she had met it with courage, skill, and humility. The experience was a testament to her quiet strength and unwavering dedication, a reminder that true talent and passion could shine brightly even in the most odd next day. The restaurant was busier than usual. Word had spread about the young waitress and her extraordinary piano performance. Guests who had not been there the night before were now curious to see the woman who had left the entire room in awe. The staff noticed the difference immediately, greeting more customers than usual and whispering excitedly about the previous evening. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if everyone was waiting for another glimpse of something remarkable. The young waitress arrived early. Putting on her uniform and taking a deep breath, she moved through the familiar space, preparing tables and checking supplies, all the while feeling a quiet awareness that today would be different. She did not let the attention make her nervous. Instead, she focused on her work with calm precision. Knowing that her skill and dedication had already spoken for themselves, the restaurant's usual rhythm continued, but beneath it was a subtle excitement that made every task feel a little more important as the morning passed. The rich man from the previous night arrived again. He had returned, not just out of curiosity, but because he wanted to witness more of her talent and perhaps get to know her story. He requested the same corner table, near the piano, and waited patiently. The young waitress noticed him immediately, but did not show surprise or hesitation. She greeted him with a polite nod and a warm smile. Recognizing that this was an unusual but welcome continuation of the previous evening, once seated, watched her move gracefully between tables. His eyes followed her, observing the fluidity of her movements, the care with which she attended to each guest, and the quiet confidence she carried. There was an undeniable charm in her demeanor, a combination of humility and poise that made her stand out even more now that people were aware of her talent. He felt a growing respect for her, realizing that her abilities extended far beyond music. She had a rare capacity to balance skill, grace, and sincerity in everything she did. After placing his order, he leaned slightly forward and spoke quietly. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but would you play for us again? Perhaps something different this time. Something that tells a story in its own way." The question was gentle, respectful, and carried a sense of anticipation rather than challenge. The young waitress considered it for a moment, letting her eyes briefly meet his. She could feel the curiosity and interest emanating from him, and the murmurs of other guests who had overheard his request. With a calm nod, she accepted. Walking toward the piano, she felt a familiar mix of focus and calm energy. She placed her fingers on the keys, letting her memory and emotion guide her. This time, she chose a piece that was slower, deeper, and more reflective. The notes began softly, almost like a whisper, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. The guests leaned forward slightly, curious and attentive, sensing that they were about to experience something different from the previous night. The music was intimate, personal, and full of emotion. Telling a story without words, the rich man watched her closely, his admiration deepening. He could see the care in her movements, the precision in every note, the emotion that flowed effortlessly through her performance. There was a quiet power in the way she played, a connection to the music that was both technical and soulful. Each chord resonated in the room, and even the staff found themselves pausing to listen. The restaurant, usually filled with chatter and clinking dishes, was transformed into a space of quiet contemplation and shared experience. As the piece progressed, it grew more complex, weaving together soft melodies and unexpected harmonies. Her hands moved with grace and confidence, conveying a story of both struggle and triumph. The music carried a depth that went beyond skill alone. It revealed the layers of her life, her dedication, and the moments she had spent practicing in solitude. Guests were captivated, their expressions reflecting awe and admiration. Some closed their eyes, allowing themselves to be fully absorbed in the sound. While others watched her hands dance across the keys with fascination, the rich man felt a deep respect for her, realizing that her talent was not just about the notes she played, but about the courage and discipline she had developed over the years. He understood that she had faced challenges in her life that required resilience and determination, and that her music was a reflection of that journey. Her performance was not merely entertainment. It was an intimate expression of who she was, and it touched everyone in the room in a profound way. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. this time louder and more enthusiastic than the night before. The guests were genuinely moved, some whispering to each other about the emotion and beauty they had just witnessed. The rich man rose again, clapping with genuine admiration. "You have a gift that can inspire anyone," he said sincerely. "I'm grateful to have experienced it again." The young waitress smiled politely, feeling a warm sense of fulfillment, but she remained humble. She had shared her passion, not for recognition, but because it was a part of who she was. After the performance, he asked if she had ever considered teaching others or sharing her music in a broader way. She shook her head softly. "I've thought about it, but I've always preferred to play for myself and those who are present. Music is personal for me, and I like it that way." Her response was honest, reflecting a deep understanding of herself and her priorities. She valued the intimacy of her music and the personal connection it created with those who listened. The rich man nodded, appreciating her perspective. "There's something special about that," he said. "Not everyone keeps the soul of their art intact. You've found a way to balance your life and your passion, and it shows in your playing." There was a quiet respect in his voice, an acknowledgement of her integrity and her careful stewardship of her talent. It was clear that he had learned more than just her musical ability. He had glimpsed the depth of her character as the evening progressed. The young waitress continued her work, moving between tables with ease and grace. Guests spoke softly to each other about the remarkable performance they had just witnessed. The restaurant had become a place of shared stories and appreciation, each person carrying a memory of the music into their own lives. The young woman's presence added warmth and charm to the space, and her ability to connect with others through both service and music had left a lasting impression. The rich man stayed for a while longer, observing her and engaging in conversation about music, life, and the paths people take. He was no longer a casual guest, but someone genuinely interested in understanding her world. Their conversation was easy and respectful, with no pretense or judgment. He shared a few stories of his own experiences with music and travel, and she listened attentively, offering insights and reflections from her own perspective. It was a meeting of minds, a quiet connection that transcended social status and expectations. By the time he left, the young waitress felt a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment that went beyond the applause and recognition. She had faced another moment of challenge, one that required courage, skill, and composure, and she had risen to it with grace. The experience reinforced her belief in the value of dedication, humility, and the quiet power of sharing one's passion with sincerity. As the night settled, she returned to the piano once more, her fingers gently brushing the keys in reflection. The echo of her music lingered in the room, a reminder of the moments she had created and the emotions she had stirred in others. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she also understood that every performance, every act of courage, and every expression of her talent contributed to the story of her life. The day ended with a sense of fulfillment, not only for the young waitress but for everyone who had been part of the experience. The rich man had left with admiration and respect. The guests had left with stories and memories, and the restaurant had been transformed by the beauty of music and the quiet strength of a young woman who had dared to share her gift. It was a day that would remain in their minds, a testament to the power of talent, dedication, and the human spirit to touch hearts and inspire those who witness it. The evening started like any other, with the restaurant softly lit and calm music playing in the background. Guests trickled in, chatting quietly, and the young waitress moved with her usual grace, arranging tables, filling water glasses, and greeting each person with a warm smile. But there was a subtle energy in the air that made her feel that this night would be different. Word had continued to spread about her piano skills, and she sensed the anticipation before it even arrived. By mid-evening, the restaurant was almost full. People came not only for the food, but also to witness the performance they had heard about from friends or read about online. The staff moved quickly, attending to the growing number of guests. But there was an undercurrent of excitement that made even routine tasks feel charged with significance. Every time the young waitress walked by a table, she caught glimpses of eyes watching her, curious and expectant. She didn't let it distract her. keeping her movements calm and precise. But she felt a quiet thrill building inside her. Among the guests was the rich man from previous nights. He had returned once again, drawn by both curiosity and admiration. This time he had brought a friend who was also well-versed in music and had a keen appreciation for talent. They sat at their corner table near the piano and watched her as she worked. His eyes followed her as she moved gracefully between the tables, her smile polite but genuine, her attention unwavering. It was clear that her presence had become a quiet anchor for the space, a combination of charm, efficiency, and the promise of something extraordinary. Once the orders were taken and the guests settled, the rich man leaned slightly forward and spoke quietly. "Would you honor us with another performance? Something that shows the full range of your abilities. I promise, this time I'm ready to be amazed." His tone was no longer teasing or challenging. It carried a genuine eagerness and respect. The young waitress considered it, feeling a mixture of calm confidence and focused excitement. She had been practicing new pieces, and she knew this was her moment to express something more profound than before. With a quiet nod, she accepted. She walked toward the piano, her steps steady and deliberate. As she reached it, she paused for a moment, placing her hands gently on the keys. The room fell silent in anticipation. Guests leaned forward slightly, their curiosity turning into attentiveness. Even the staff, busy with their duties, found themselves drawn to the piano, stopping briefly to witness the unfolding moment. The young waitress closed her eyes, letting her fingers and memory guide her. Feeling the connection between herself and the music she loved so dearly, the first notes were soft and gentle, almost like a whisper, yet they carried an unmistakable depth. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, creating a melody that was delicate yet emotionally powerful. The guests were immediately drawn in, their attention completely captured. The rich man and his friend exchanged glances, both impressed by the subtle complexity and the emotional resonance of the piece. It was clear that she was not merely playing music. She was telling a story, weaving emotions, experiences, and personal reflections into every chord. As the piece progressed, the music built in intensity. The young waitress' hands moved effortlessly across the keys, demonstrating both technical mastery and profound sensitivity. Each note seemed carefully chosen, each chord deliberately placed to create a narrative that resonated deeply. The room seemed to disappear around her. The clinking of cutlery, soft conversations, and ambient sounds faded into the background. Leaving only the music and the shared experience of those listening, the guests were captivated, some closing their eyes to absorb the full effect, others watching the graceful movements of her fingers and the subtle expressions on her face. The rich man felt a profound respect for her, recognizing that her talent was not only about skill, but about the emotion, discipline, and courage it took to perform with such authenticity. He understood that her music was a reflection of her life of struggles, triumphs, in moments of quiet determination, and that it was an expression of her innermost self. The piece shifted unexpectedly. Moving into a faster, more dynamic section, her fingers flew across the keys with flawless precision, executing rapid passages with ease and elegance. The music took on a new energy, vibrant and powerful, capturing the attention of everyone in the room. Guests sat upright, mesmerized by the sudden intensity and complexity. The waitress remained composed, fully immersed in the music, her focus unwavering. It was a display of skill and confidence that left no room for doubt about her talent. As the final section approached, she returned to a softer, more reflective melody. The music slowed, each note carefully placed, resonating with a depth that touched the hearts of the listeners. The rich man felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed by the emotional weight of the performance. He realized that he had underestimated her, that her talent extended far beyond anything he could have imagined. She had turned a casual challenge into a profound experience, demonstrating not only her skill but her ability to convey feeling and connect with others on a deep level. The final note lingered in the air, echoing softly through the room. There was a moment of stunned silence as everyone absorbed what they had just witnessed. Then, gradually, applause began to rise. It started quietly, with a few guests clapping, then grew into a thunderous ovation that filled the restaurant. The sound of appreciation and admiration was almost overwhelming, a testament to the impact of her performance. Even the staff joined in, unable to contain their awe and excitement. The rich man rose to his feet, clapping enthusiastically, his eyes shining with genuine admiration. He approached the young waitress, extending his hand with a smile. "I've never seen anything like that in my life," he said, his voice filled with respect. "You are incredible. Your talent, your dedication, your ability to move people with music, it's extraordinary." The young waitress smiled politely, feeling a warm sense of fulfillment. She had shared a part of herself, her passion, and her journey, and it had been received with respect and admiration. She returned to her seat, allowing the applause to continue. Guests continued to speak in hushed tones, sharing their reactions and impressions, amazed at the depth of emotion and skill she had displayed. The rich man's friend nodded in agreement, clearly impressed by her ability to convey a narrative through music. It was not just technical proficiency that captivated them, but the soul and heart she poured into every note as the evening progressed. The atmosphere in the restaurant was transformed. Guests spoke quietly about the performance, some sharing stories of their own experiences with music, others reflecting on how deeply they had been affected by her playing. The young waitress continued her work with a quiet confidence, moving gracefully between tables, her smile genuine and calm. She had faced the challenge presented by the rich man and turned it into an opportunity to express herself fully, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. Later, the rich man approached her once more. "I have to ask," he said, his tone sincere, "how did you develop such skill and composure? You must have faced many challenges along the way." She paused, reflecting on her journey. "I've practiced for years," she admitted. "Music has always been my passion, my escape. Life has its difficulties, but I've always found a way to keep going, to keep learning. This piano is more than just an instrument. It's a part of who I am." Her words carried honesty and humility. Reflecting the dedication and resilience that had brought her to this moment, he nodded thoughtfully, clearly impressed not just by her performance but by her perspective. "It's inspiring," he said. "Most people never discover or pursue what they truly love, but you've managed to turn your passion into something remarkable. You've touched everyone here tonight, and I'm grateful to have witnessed it." There was a quiet sincerity in his voice, a recognition of her courage and the depth of her talent. It was clear that he had been changed by the experience, gaining a new understanding of what it meant to recognize and appreciate true skill and dedication. The young waitress returned to her duties. But the energy in the restaurant remained heightened. Guests spoke softly about the performance, some lingering longer to savor the memory, others making plans to return in the future. The rich man stayed for a while, continuing to observe and converse with her. Genuinely interested in her story and her approach to music, their conversation was relaxed, respectful, and meaningful, reflecting a connection that went beyond social roles or expectations. As the night drew to a close, the young waitress sat for a moment at the piano, her fingers lightly touching the keys, reflecting on the experience. The echoes of her performance lingered in the room, a testament to the power of music and the quiet strength of the individual who had shared it. She knew that she had faced a challenge and had risen to it with grace, skill, and authenticity. The evening had reinforced her belief in the importance of dedication, humility, and the courage to express oneself fully. By the time the last guests left, the young waitress felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only demonstrated her musical abilities, but had also touched the hearts of those who had witnessed her performance. The rich man had left with admiration and respect, the guests with stories and memories, and the restaurant with a renewed sense of wonder and appreciation. It was an evening that would be remembered by all, a moment where talent, passion, and sincerity came together to create something truly extraordinary. As she closed the restaurant for the night, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the years of practice, the quiet moments of solitude, the small victories and setbacks. She understood that her talent was not just in her fingers or her technical ability, but in her heart, her discipline, and her willingness to share a piece of herself with others. The night had been a testament to the transformative power of music. Retha morning after her latest performance, the restaurant was quiet again, though there was an underlying buzz among the staff. Many of them had shared stories with friends and family about the young waitress and the powerful music she had played the night before. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if everyone knew that her talent had begun to create ripples far beyond the walls of the restaurant. The young waitress arrived early, as always, preparing for the day ahead. But her mind wandered briefly to the events of the previous nights. She knew that something had shifted, not only in the way the guests perceived her, but in the way she perceived herself. Her confidence was no longer just quiet assurance. It had deepened into a steady sense of purpose. She had faced challenges, performed under pressure, and shared her passion with people who now recognized it. The applause, the respect, and the genuine admiration she had received were not fleeting. They were affirmations of the dedication, discipline, and resilience that had defined her journey.